So the NFL owners and the competition committee have been very busy over the last few days making some rule changes brought to the NFL, and it looks like these are real. These are going to be happening. The NFL has, for one, banned the hip drop tackle. They have added a third challenge. If you were successful on your first or second challenge, you don't have to be successful on both. And they've also changed the kickoff, implementing the XFL's kickoff, where they bring everybody close together beyond the 50-yard line, and instead of the traditional where everyone's just running at each other, they're like 10 yards apart from each other, and then they go from there. So they've been really, I think this is really the most rule changes we've seen in a week period in NFL history. Like, they've been going absolutely nuts, and we're going to talk about each of these changes that the NFL has implemented so far. And who knows? I mean, geez, but at this rate, by the time this video is done, they're probably going to have another rule change and another new thing implemented to the NFL. And I'm sure there's still plenty that they are talking about. Are they talking about the grass instead of the turf? Probably not. Probably never going to happen. But the first one, the one that I think is the easiest pill to swallow for, I think they also made it that for you can bring up a third quarterback from the practice squad in a limited amount of times. So that one I don't think is going to have a massive impact in the NFL. So that one, I'll just start with that one. You bring up a third emergency quarterback. Did they get used at all this last season? NFL wants quarterbacks to be available. They don't want a situation where a team is playing their running back in the NFC Championship at quarterback, which we saw with the San Francisco 49ers 2 years ago. So, look, I don't care. Yeah, I like it, I guess. Cool. Move on. The next one, like I said, the easiest one to swallow beyond that is the change of the challenges to where you get an additional challenge beyond the first and the second if you get either of those successful. I thought it would have been a little bit of a better decision, like you see across other sports, that if you get both of them correct, you get an additional challenge. But as things stand, you only need to get one of the two correct to get a third challenge. And challenges are fun. You know when either it's your team or when it's going against you, potentially, that a questionable play happens, and let's say it's a questionable play happens and it goes right for your team. You're wanting your team to run towards the line, get that next play off. You would rather them spike the ball into the ground than see that full 40 seconds come off the play clock just to get it over with. And then on the other side, you know you are screaming at your TV, or if you're at the game, you're screaming at the field for the coach to get out the challenge flag if the play was questionable. I think challenges are a really exciting portion of this game. But if you're getting a third challenge, I can definitely see that start to drag on a little bit. The NFL, I can see there being an issue coming to be where the games get a little bit more dragged on, as now you have a potential for 6 challenges in one game. And we see across other sports how they're trying to handle time management. And if there is one league that can afford to not really worry about time management just because they know their viewers are going to be that loyal and are going to stick to the screen no matter what, it's probably the NFL. It's exciting, I guess. I don't really see it making too big of a difference because either way, you still have the risk of losing timeouts. And, if you get 2 wrong, that's 2 timeouts that you've lost. So I don't think teams are just going to say, screw it, let's throw the flag because we could potentially get a third. A lot. You could see that early on in games with a play that's so extremely obvious that you just do it knowing you'll get a third one. But I don't think this is going to be something, it's kind of like the emergency quarterback. I don't think it's going to be a large part of games. So it's interesting. We'll see how it plays out. But the other two are a little bit more interesting. And we'll talk first about probably the most controversial one, and that is the hip drop tackle. Notably, we've seen some pretty big players get hurt over the last few years with Tony Pollard, with Mark Andrews, notably last year for the Baltimore Ravens. I don't know how strongly this is going to be judged in an actual NFL game. Now, if a player gets hurt, if a hip drop tackle occurs and a player gets hurt, now that is definitely a point where you'll probably see the ref step in, throw a flag. But I think it's going to be something like we've seen in a lot in the recent years when it comes to some penalties and some fouls that the NFL wanted to bring to the forefront and made it a little bit more highlighted, where you see this called a lot more in the preseason games, and then once the regular season comes around, that it's still going to happen. It's still going to be a foul called, a flag thrown. However, I don't think it's going to be as prevalent. But it does open up a bag of worms as to, okay, so how can a defensive player tackle now? Obviously, the NFL has gone the way of the offense, and the offense is what sells tickets, is what gets everyone into their seats watching every day. And I know there's still some of you guys out there that are defensive purists, and you still love the defensive position or the defensive side of the ball in the NFL, and obviously it's necessary. Look what the Chiefs did this year. They, in a way, ran the table because of their defense, because of how good that defense is with a offense that wasn't firing as strongly as they have been in previous years. So there is definitely still a strong need for a good defense, and that still has a high amount of value in this NFL league. However, what are they allowed to do? How are they allowed to tackle? What's next? You can't go for their knees? The hip drop tackle is a tackle that for years is just a benchmark, quintessential, that's cookie cutter. You look at the hip drop tackle, and that's what you teach guys to do. Hold on, bring them to the ground. Simple as. I don't think guys are trying to hurt other players when they're tackling them that way. It's just, and oftentimes you see it with corners, with safeties, guys who are a little bit undersized, trying to tackle a running back, trying to tackle a tight end, which we saw with Tony Pollard, with Mark Andrews, with guys that have bigger legs, that just overall have a bigger body than they do. It's harder to get them to the ground. So you just grab onto them, pull them to the ground by any means necessary. This should cut down on injuries, I guess, a little bit. And the NFL does have an injury issue, and that's something they're clearly trying to address with the kickoffs and now with this. But how can you tackle? You can't go for their head. You can't tackle them around the waist. Probably going to be a rule soon. You can't tackle them at the knees. It's going to get to a point that you just can't tackle anybody. I don't think it's going to get that extreme. I personally don't like this rule. Obviously, I don't want to see guys get hurt. However, it's going to happen. It's football. It's physical. It's going to happen. That's just something you can't remove from the game. There's no sport in the world that has as many injuries as football does, and that's just because of the nature of the game. It's physical. It's intense. People get hurt. You're dealing with soft tissue. You're dealing with ligaments. You're dealing with parts of the body that are not supposed to move like the NFL athlete asks their body to move. So it's going to happen. I don't like this rule personally at all. And the kickoff rule, they're doing everything they can to get rid of special teams. They want special teams to be as little of an impact as possible. In addition to this, if you kick the ball through the end zone and it goes for a touchback, the ball gets moved up to the 30-yard line now. So they went from the 20 to the 25, now the 25 to the 30-yard line. The NFL is screaming. They want to do everything they can to get rid of kickoffs, get rid of special teams as much as possible. They're making it as easy as they can for the return team to just take the ball and go. Don't have a run back. Don't try to do anything crazy. Just get the ball, and here you go. 30-yard line. Are you going to keep moving forward? 35, 40, 45, 50? Like, are you going to start sounding like John Madden commentating, or you just keep going further and further down the field? And then the new hybrid version of this kickoff, where you have the kickoff team set up, I believe is at the 40 to 45 yard line, and then the returning team at the 30 to 35 yard line, and then they just run 10 yards instead of running full speed at each other, which I certainly understand how that's going to cause less injuries, but it does take away from the entertainment value. There is nothing more exciting than seeing your team take back a kickoff and with guys setting up on the 45-yard line, and touchbacks are to the 30-yard line. It's a 15-yard difference from where they're running to where you could potentially just get the ball if the ball goes through the end out of the end zone. I don't like it. I don't like these rule changes. The challenge one, cool. Don't think it's going to be too big of a deal. The third quarterback one, I don't think it's going to matter literally at all. Maybe 1 or 2 times total next year. But the hip drop, getting rid of that, getting rid of something that's just what has been for years, just a regular tackle, and unfortunately has caused some injuries recently. And then this kickoff rule, I don't like either. I don't mean to come out here and just sound like a grandpa and emote and complain, but if you're going to change rules or you're going to change something, change the turf. I know there are ways now to make turf better than there was in years past, but you look, I think the biggest example of how we know turf is not right, when you have these international soccer teams, when you have these club soccer teams coming over from other countries just to play one game on a field with turf. They have them take out the entire turf, all of it gone, and put in their own grass field. And as soon as the game's over, they take out the grass, they put the turf back in. You look at countries like England, who are pretty north up there. I think there's points in England that are more northern than at any point in the United States. And like you look at Newcastle, you look at in Manchester, you look at those northern cities in the United Kingdom, in England, and they all play on grass. It's cold, it's rainy, it snows sometimes. It's not good weather, especially in those winter months where the NFL season is mostly played in. So is soccer, and they find a way to keep their fields maintained. But here we are today. That's still not been addressed. What do you think of these rule changes? Personally, not a big fan, or I don't think it's gonna make too much of a difference. If you like them, let me know down in the comments why. What about it is good to you? What about it do you think is going to improve the game? Let me know down there below in the comments. While down there, hit that like button, hit that sub button. Appreciate y'all for watching. Have a great rest of your day. Take care, everybody.